What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is KomodoDragonJesus Vita here for Poker VIP. Once again, making a video on how I beat 200 no limit snap on 888. It's going to be a live play video. I've been sitting playing this session for a while now, and let's get into it and see what we can make happen. Right now the pool looks moderately soft, but also pretty tight. So far I've been stealing a little bit looser than I typically do, and we might see that a little more throughout the video. In fact, we're going to open up 7-8. I think this is a pretty good spot to go for a squeeze. Pot size is 28. Yeah, we're probably just going to do that. Oh, and then we get lovely, lovely aces. Step one, of course, is just to raise it. And this board is going to be pretty good for my range. Villain will likely have jacks and sevens. But from these positions, he probably won't have too many pocket threes. There's a variety of top pair jacks as well as other pairs you can have as well here. Looks like we get no action though, that's too bad. The c-bet with aces there is typically going to do really well simply because hands that we get to fold in that spot, not necessarily on the flop but maybe on turns and rivers, are going to be ace-high float type hands, and since we block so many of them, villain is just going to be more pair heavy. I'm not going to throw in a barrel on this board. I do think, yeah, we have some overcards, we have some backdoor draws with the 9, but this is a board we're going to get very, very few folds on, and I don't love the idea of having to multi-barrel Queen-9 offsuit there. I did make the initial open raise because there's a casual player in the big blind. I'm actually going to check back this dry board. I think this type of board is one that the small blind, as long as he has a reasonable range, will be folding on very, very little. And if that's the case, then I think we're better off just checking back. Big blind is also going to be the player with the most sevens in the range. So while that probably won't end up being an issue a lot, this is going to be a consideration. I'll just check blind versus the reg, call against the extraordinarily small 3-bet, and flop a full house. That's lovely. Hopefully this is one of those guys that just goes like pot, pot, pot. 13, it's not pot, but I'm still just going to go for the check call here. Had he gone like super, super small, I think I would like a check raise, but this is a reasonable sizing to just flat against. He goes for the second bet, and I don't think I need to raise here. I think this is a spot where I can just go check call all the way down, since he'll have a lot of crazy strong hands here, as well as like double overcards will be very, very tempted to bluff on this type of board. I timed out here with the Queen 7, that's fine. He's all in, yes, call, double overcards betting, lovely, and we'll just check all the way down. Queen high beats 10 high. It's lovely when that type of spot works out. Okay, we are going to be raising here. Much larger 3-bet this time, but at this stack depth, I'm not going to be folding my pairs most of the time. This type of hand will be a check fold on this board, assuming he bets. I think we'll see lots of small bets on this flop. We don't, which I do find a little bit interesting. I'm still going to continue with the check plan. I think when we do see checks on this board, it is going to be a little bit of a showdown heavy range. So while I don't expect to win a lot checking it down, I don't expect betting to be incredibly good. I flop a gut shot, bet small, get check raise. This check raise is also pretty small. I'm going to happily continue it against it. Looks like on turn we have a double gutter, so we'll be continuing against most bet sizes. I have a very small bet size. I think when he bets that small, I'm actually going to re-raise. Simply because I'd expect like sets and strong two pairs, as well as the straight, to just kind of try to mash money in. And then I'll put in a fairly reasonable size bet on the river, probably something close to 100. Something like this. Also helps that I have an 8 blocker, which blocks the nuts. Go for a pretty standard check call here against a turned up. I'm not sure if he bets all his king X on this board, but I'm going to attempt to represent them with the lead on the turn. And his sizing gave away his hand strength on the turn very well, which is awesome. But we got called down by top pair 9. Not really much of a kicker there. Yeah, I mean, I guess sometimes you get called down. Start off with an open with the king queen. Looks like we're just taking that one down. Big blind here is on the tighter side. That's what my purple note means there. So we're going to open up a little wider against him. And when we open up a range like this, this becomes literal bottom of range, so there's nothing to think about when getting 3-bet there. Unless, of course, we have something like super deep stacks. I'll be starting off with a very small bet on the right, taking it down, lovely. And ace deuce is not going to be a c-bet on this board. For a couple reasons here. Even improving to an ace, on the turn, don't feel great about that. One of my aces is tainted with a club as well. So I have very, very limited double barrel opportunity, and the hands that do give me like gut shots and stuff are going to be pretty poor cards to bluff in general. Because they don't really change the board state. Most broadways he flats are going to continue on this board. Any pair he flats are going to continue on this board. better ace X are going to continue on that board. So while I do think those pretty dry boards are going to be, nice for me as the pre-flop raiser, I don't think it's a spot we're going to just be c-betting 100% of the time. A couple lovely hands, of course. Ace Jack starts off the raise. Pocket Jacks will continue with a 3-bet. If we get 4-bet, I'll flat. If we don't, pretty poor flop. I'm wondering if I just want to bet it small with my entire range, or just check it. I think I'm going to go for the check. I think we'll probably see a lot of checks out of him on this king too. Which lets us get to river cheaply. At this point in the hand, I mean, I guess I could just go like barrel and like maybe get him to fold some queens. But for the most part, if I'm considering betting once, I'm not getting a better hand to fold ever, and I'm not getting action from worse. So I don't think betting once is going to be a great plan, and I don't think betting twice in a spot where I've kind of capped my range a bit on the flop is going to be ideal. But we'll check down and beat a variety of worse pairs. There we go. All right, we get 2 flats with the 9s. This starts off as a check. Turn is absolutely lovely. Button never has the straight. Eli Pooch, I mean, I guess technically he could have it, but I do think it's going to be rare when he doesn't lead out. Let's bet. I'm also going to check my jacks 3-way. And I guess I have to call a bet here. Actually, I'm going to keep on betting my 9s for value for a kind of smallish sizing, 25. I think 8s are going to be very rare in his range. I think we get looked up by some top pair King Jack, Queen Jack type hands. And was that the case? Ace 10, okay, second pair. So he basically, I guess he thought, I'm polarized, either I'm bluffing or I'm not, and went for the call. Queen 5 versus the sizing, we are going to continue. Hit second pair, which isn't bad. This is going to be an extraordinarily tough board for me to continue on with a lot of my range. So when I do hit pairs, we're of course going to be continuing. I'm going to be calling my 3s in position versus the tighter player, who goes for a check on this board. Don't think we're going to see a check fold at a high frequency, so we're going to start with a check back. And I'm even just going to check my Queen 5 with a better kicker. I would be betting the river for value. Something like King 10 plus, or sorry, Queen 10 plus definitely. So we start off with the bet on the right, 3-bet on the left. Get check raise here. It's actually quite a big check raise. I'm of course going to be folding to that with queen high. Click OMG winner. Just thinking about doing something here. He is a reg. I should take that off him, but for the moment I'm not going to. I think ace jack is a pretty clear fold. And I'm just going to 3x with the jacks. He did make it quite large to begin with. So we go up to 21. It's a lovely board. We're going to start that off with a small bet. Also going to continue and see a flop with the 9s. He goes for the raise, like the min raise, which is weird. Never folding. The question is, do I just want to ship it or just flat? My hand is actually quite vulnerable. I might just want to ship. Against like the larger pairs he's going to have, we're going to get money in on the turn anyways. So I don't think there's very large difference against those type of hands. He is playing half stack, so I do think there's potential for him to just be like, raising a hand like 6x or 7s or 8s here that he'll be planning on stacking off with. If he happens to have a flush draw here, it's a really crummy spot for him. In that spot, I do think we take some hands like aces and kings and just flat. Simply because those hands are a lot less vulnerable than a hand like pocket jacks. And oftentimes when villain is just pure bluffing there, he will have 2 high cards. Apparently the nice hands keep coming. I'm just going to go for a 3-bet with the short stack. You notice I'm going larger out of position than I am in position. Very annoying board. I wish we could just like swap these boards. I guess I'm going to start this one off with a check. Start this one off with a check as well. If he lets me check down here, I'm okay with that. I mean, I do have, a fairly strong showdownable hand. That being said, if I have ace king of diamonds here and he has some sort of a hand with a heart and I let him get there, I don't think that's the biggest disaster in this type of spot. Call the queens. If he bets, I might go for a river raise here. I guess I'll fold the ace king. Yeah, so he can't have any king high flushes, queen high flushes, 10 high flushes. He can't have ace queen. So he basically has to have like the ace jack or something like 8-9 in order to have a flush here. I also block ace queen. I don't think my hand is good enough to call against a bet, but I think raising with those very, very, very relevant blockers is going to work out well. And yay, it did. It's always nice. Moderately disconnected dry board. We're going to start off with about a 3rd pot here. If you guys are watching this and it probably won't be the best in like the micro stakes. If you're playing any type of similar stake to this and you don't use that kind of really small betting strategy in any part of your game, like you don't have to use it all the time, but just if you literally never use it, I think both this video and definitely my last one, maybe the other few after that, I think display really well that it's a really, really effective bet size. With the exception of the one big hand we had where we got raised and then bluffed. I've just seen an astronomical amount of folds to that super small sizing. Versus the small blind flatting range, I think this is going to be a pretty good board to go large on. So I'm going to start off with 7 into 950. I guess we bet this one. Out of position, we go a little bit bigger here. I'm going to keep on barreling with this 8-7. I do think we have decent fold equity against most hands that aren't a king. I do think that a lot of the flushes that he could have his range simply aren't there because he flatted preflop. Stuff like the queen jack suited, stuff like the jack 10 suited, ace jack suited, that type of stuff, I don't expect to be in his range. Just going to check fold this one, and I guess when we get raised, it is a little bit odd because, like I said, I don't expect a lot of flushes to be in his range. But I think this hand might be a little too loose of a continue there. 8 high plus the gut shot. I'm not going to bluff river with queen 9. He shows up with a hand that is very expected. Some 10x, some weak ace x I would also expect to see there. I get 3-bet by breaking neck here. I mean, we're not folding. I do have him marked on the tighter side, so I think I am just going to flat against him rather than attempting to do some sort of 4-bet get in and play. 3-bet with the ace deuce. Lovely, lovely board. He goes for the check back. Ace king is going to be a very prominent part of a lot of people's check back range, which is unfortunate. So I think checking the turn is also going to be good. And when he checks back turn, I really don't expect to see too many kings at all, so I am going to be value betting something like 18 here with my pocket jacks. I'll be really surprised if he shows up with something better here, but I guess we'll see. And on this low board, I'm going to start off with a c-bet with the ace deuce. It's a crummy hand, doesn't connect with this board at all. And most of the hands that I'm getting to fold by betting here are hands that I'm ahead of anyways. I do realize that. But they're also hands with significant equity against me, and they're hands that will very often bluff me on turn and or river, which I will not be able to defend against. Really mixing up my words there a little bit. Sorry, guys. And we have a raise spot and a fold spot. Can very happily raise here. Not only is this a strong hand, but we got two players that I assume are weaker in both the small blind and the big blind, so we're very happy about that. And we're going to give away a little fishbone here. Reg versus reg in the blinds. Ace King is obviously a monster. Doesn't get into any type of raise war. And we get this flop. I'm going to go for a check on this flop. He starts with a fairly sizable bet. Don't think we can really fold our ace kings. I'm going to be at a pretty big range disadvantage on this turn. And I'm just going to 4-bet, get it in against an aggressive reg on the right as well. This board is definitely going to be one that I'm going to have enough of an advantage on that I could just bet small with everything. So we're going to size down here to about 2750. Ten's an abysmal card for my range. My range doesn't include pocket tens, his does. His range will have almost certainly more king queens than mine will, as well as two pairs that hit this board. I'm going to want to be checking this turn with basically everything up in and including sets and overpairs. And I guess river's a ship. Ship or bet really small. You know what? No, it's the nuts. Gotta go with ship. I was thinking of going a little smaller because I don't expect his range to be incredibly strong after he checks back turn. I expect him to have a decent amount of like one pair type hands, but that river brings in a few two pairs. Also, a lot of his one pair hands are going to have blockers to the nuts, so those are going to be more likely to call anytime they have something like an ace jack or an ace queen with an ace in hand or something with a king in hand. We're going to squeeze with the ace jack. And if you're wondering, that hand that I just shoved, it's a spot where I'll have to take hands like, for example, an ace-10 offsuit that I'm 4-bet bluffing and just jam that as a bluff. So we're not 100% for value there. We have continue against this fairly, I guess it's a reasonable sized 4-bet. I'm running well, apparently, which is awesome. 10's defend against a reg, got a pretty good board. And he just jams and we have the nuts. Alright, more interesting hand, pocket 10s. I guess it's mildly more interesting. We have a very, very easy continue here. Queen's going to hit both of our ranges pretty well. It's going to hit me with all my ace-queen floats as well as queen x of spades, which is going to be a non-negligible amount of them. You know, there's going to be the king queens, the queen jacks, the queen 10s, and the ace queen, I guess. But interesting small bet. I'm going to call. I think folding, you can probably fold some pairs to that, but folding a hand as strong as 10s means that I'm only continuing with queens or better, and if I'm only continuing with queens or better, then his c-bet is going to be incredibly profitable on the turn because I'm going to be folding like 90% of the time. And on the river, I think it's a fine spot to just fold. I have every combo of ace-queen to just snap him off with a nutty hand there, as well as some ace-high flush draws that hit the pair. Versus MP, I'm just going to fold the fives. If big blind is super splashy, then we want to make an excuse to get into that pot. But it's a spot where I do not think that calling is going to be profitable. And if we're getting into 3-bets, then we're looking into a really, really wide 3-betting range if we're including hands like that. Which is not necessarily a bad thing against the right opponents, but against anybody solid, you'll get yourself in trouble. I think there's a difference between this ace-8-6 board with the flush draw and something, even like ace-4 deuce with the flush draw, or, you know, ace-4 deuce without a flush draw as well. I think this board is kind of coordinated enough that I'm going to start checking back some of my range on it. So I think king-8 is a decent spot to do that. I'm going to bet this board. If he doesn't have a spade, it'll be really hard for him to continue. Also, the 6-4-3 are not cards that typically, they're typically included in a majority of your calling range, so I think we'll get a lot of folds because of that as well. Just going to throw out a medium bet with the king-8. I expect to have the best hand here pretty much always. Villain will almost never have an ace, but kings and queens should be forced to check call us anytime he has them. With a weaker player in the small blind, we are going to open this up. And I'm not going to be folding for this price. I think this is a silly spot. My hand is really bad, but we're getting 3-1 in position. I find it really difficult to fold hands, and that's why, you know, I think he should be going quite a bit larger there. He goes for the check. It's interesting. I don't really know what this guy's doing. I'm going to see if maybe I can take it down with a $10 stab here, seeing if he has a check fold range. The fact that he does is absolutely amazing. But I always find it a little bit suspicious when you have a board like that. Oops, not like that one. Where's my history? Doesn't matter, I guess. You guys know the board. I always find it a little suspicious when there's like a dry king-high board like that and it gets checked by the pre-flop 3-better. Based on his sizing, you know, I don't expect that guy to really know what he's doing. But anytime it comes out from... sorry about that. Anytime it comes out from like a regular, for example, I'm always a little bit suspicious, and I probably tend to underbluff those spots. In that spot, because I had a hand like Jack-8 offsuit, I'm probably going to be significantly over bluffing that spot versus villain, simply because my range will be a lot wider than it usually is. But that's fine as long as nobody tells him. We'll go with the 3-bet here with the 8-7. We're deep enough that I don't really mind getting 4-bet too much, but I also want to isolate the weaker player. Similar spot here, actually. Not the greatest 3-bet. I guess I'm considering these pocket nines a value 3-bet against the weaker player. But naturally, they are nowhere. They're mildly near the top of hands. And I just want to get this in over 2 streets because of his stack size. So just going to think about how to do this for a second. If I bet there's an additional $31 in the pot, that leaves us not quite where we want to be. So I'm going to go, I'm just going to go 21 here. 21, and then we'll shove the rest on the turn. If he check raises me, I will be calling. Got an open raise with the pocket fours. Get called by a reg in the big blind. When he defends against middle position, I expect him to have quite a small amount of air on this type of board. Most of his defending range is going to be Broadway and good ace high type hands, as well as pairs. If I decide to take my really wide bet everything strategy, hands such as pocket eights aren't going to be folding, or I 100% do not expect them to from this player. So therefore I don't think the c-bet with the fours is accomplishing too much. We get the overbet on the turn. It's a good overbet by him, simply because I'm going to have an absolutely minuscule amount of tens when I decide to check back there. But with a hand like pocket fours, I think it makes for a pretty easy fold. I'm never folding this a7 for this price. The question is, would I prefer to 3-bet it? And I don't think so. Get a pretty nice flop, top pair. Most certainly not going to have any type of range advantage on this board 3-way, so we're not going to be leading into villain. I'm also not going to be leading with the a7. This is similar to a hand that I chose not to lead earlier. I think that was like an ace deuce. And it just, I don't have very many good barreling opportunities. I don't expect to get many folds. I could start to barrel on the jack, but I'm choosing not to, simply because if he checks back this flop, if he's a straightforward type player, I expect him to bet like any of his low or medium pairs on this board. So when he checks back this flop, I expect him to show up with more kind of hands that miss the flop, and that kind of leads him to have Broadway type hands, which the jack connects fairly well with. We do just get the ace high versus ace high. The fact that he has fishbones on him influences my decision a little bit there as well, just to not bluff him as liberally. I would have folded the a7 if we saw the triple barrel. My one pair hand is pretty poor, and especially when the hearts come in without a heart blocker, we're going to have a tough time winning versus a triple barrel. Could see what kind of hands he checked back, and it was a 4-5. 4-5 seems like a really good bluff there. Maybe not really good, but pretty good. I'm going to start to wrap up here in the tails, and I just kind of want to just mention why I think that 4-5 hand is decent. Maybe I don't need to wrap up to do that. Essentially because it's a hand that connects with the board in no way whatsoever. There's a casual player I'm going to call here. And so in that type of spot, if he had a heart draw, which was if he had a spade draw, which was the draw on the flop, and he bluffed into me, then I would be calling him more often because I would have missed draws less often. So therefore I would have value hands more often. Other good hands for him to have would be basically anything with a heart in it. Simply because those block the backdoor flush, which I'm going to have a reasonable amount of. And I guess that covers it. If anybody wants to know more about that, feel free to ask questions in the comment section below the video, as always, guys. We'll be raising versus breaking neck. I expect him to fold a little bit too often here. Naturally, as soon as I say that, get the 3-bet. About 115 blinds deep, pocket kings, against Crump. Do I know anything about Crump? I don't think so. The play is cool to 4-bet. I guess I take a size around 40. We get, the ace on the board, which is terrible. I'm going to start this off with a check. And we're going to see what he does here. As a weaker player, I would expect him to have a decent amount of aces here. I don't think we can check fold right away, but I think turn will be a pretty easy check fold once the spade comes in and I don't have one. It's a tough spot if I do have the king of spades, simply because I don't really beat any of his value range, but I will have moderate equity with my nut flush draw. I'm just going to check it one more time. He can certainly have a lot of aces that go to pot control the turn. Though I don't think that's necessary when I check this flop, because I'm going to be betting most of my flush draws. He takes a really, really passive line with ace-king. Not only pre-flop, but also on the turn and river. I think that's a hand that very clearly wants to get all the money in. Well, he wouldn't have gotten value from my exact hand, but the times where I 4-bet ace-queen, especially when I have ace-queen with a spade, all money is going in. And alright guys, let's start to wrap it up here. We'll play out the rounds. We got ace-6 opening up. Okay, Naz okay. Goes for the flat in the small blind, which is a little unusual from a reg, but not necessarily bad. On this type of board, 3-way, I think I prefer to check back. Naz decides to go for a bet. I don't think it's a spot he's necessarily going to be pure bluffing, so the times he has Jack 10 of clubs, for example, I don't think that's getting bet. And against a range of strong semi-bluffs as well as value hands, I don't think this hand does incredible, so we're just going to fold it. I feel a little bit tight doing that, but I did it. It's done. Can't go back. And looks like that's going to be it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. As usual, make sure to post questions, comments, and stuff like that below the video. And I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a fun session. I think we ended up, a decent bit. Big stack on the right. So yeah, once again, this has been Darius KomodoDragonJesus Vita, here for Poker VIP. Thanks for watching.